I've been a fan of the Beatles for the longest time. I remember I was 13, maybe 14 years old when my dad brought me my first copy of the White Album. I heard the album for the first time and I was amazed. I had an epiphany thanks to that album and its many different sounds, and it was because of this that I became really invested in the band's discography, so I went on to listen to every other record they had to offer. I was so shocked by the quality of the band's discography that I couldn't stop there, so I went on to listen to every single solo album the members released. But even that wasn't enough, because after listening to more than 50 albums, I still needed more. So I went on to listen to any album that was somehow related to the Beatles, and that's how I found the Beach Boys, the Kings, the Yardbirds, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, and Yoko Ono. Up to this point, I really didn't know much about her because I was just listening to the music. I wasn't really researching about the band's history or anything like that. But after I did my research, after I read about the story of the band, it was pretty clear that everyone seemed to agree that Yoko Ono was the person who broke up the band.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because you know, Yoko, you've even been called the Dragon Lady, who.
Yes.
But this was 10 years ago and I was just trying to focus on music, so that's why I went on to listen to her solo discography, and I have to say it's been one of the most painful experiences I've ever had to go through when it comes to music. I am not exaggerating when I say that every single second of her solo discography is very questionable. So maybe out of disgust for her solo discography, I agreed with everyone else that she was the one who broke up the Beatles without really knowing anything about the situation. However, nowadays my opinion has changed quite a lot when it comes to Yoko and her influence on the Beatles, because it seems to me like there were a lot of things that affected the band way more than John Lennon's relationship with Yoko. And honestly, it wasn't until I uploaded a couple videos to the channel talking about her music and her impact on the Beatles that I realized that people don't really agree with me. A lot of you seem to still believe that she's the one who broke up the band. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a video of me defending Yoko. I think she had a really negative impact in John Lennon's solo discography. I also believe that the way she deals with criticism is really obnoxious and pretentious, and her ideals, the way she treats art and music, is something that I don't really agree with. This anti-art thing that she has been, practicing throughout the years is one of the most hateful things I've ever encountered when it comes to the music industry, because it allows her to do things like this. And act as if she's actually doing something, as if that's art, yelling into a microphone with no plan and no passion behind it. And don't get me wrong, I like some of her visuals, some of her art pieces are kind of interesting, but that's as far as I'm able to compliment Yoko. But saying that she's never made a decent musical statement is not the same as saying that she broke up the Beatles. I think we can all agree to that. I know that she has some really weird behaviors during the Abbey Road and the Get Back sessions and even the White Album sessions. There's been a lot of stories about drug use in the studio and how she used to say that the Beatles' music were very simplistic, and how she brought a bed into the studio when they went through a car crash because she wanted to be right next to John. And mind you, John also participated in this. Actually, he was the main reason why Yoko was constantly in the studio. But I think we should also say that she's a fully functional human being, and I'm pretty sure she noticed that her presence in the studio wasn't the greatest thing in the world for the rest of the band.
See, but their point is that they're trying to be as near together as they can. They want to stay together, those two. So it's all right, let the young lovers stay together. But it's not that bad,
Were you writing together much more before she came around?
Oh, yeah.
And I know that the reason why a lot of people seem to agree with me when I say that she wasn't the one who broke up the band is because of a lot of things that Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney have been saying recently, saying that she wasn't the one who broke up the group, that the group was going to break up anyway, that they were not in a good place as a band, and they all wanted to go in different directions. But if you compare that to a lot of the things that Paul McCartney was saying back in the 70s and 80s, to a lot of the things that George Harrison was saying, and things that even John Lennon himself was arguing back then, it's pretty obvious that all of them thought of Yoko as a really big problem for their chemistry as a band.
I think we would have all continued the Beatles, but Yoko came along, John fell wildly in love with her, he needed a big change in his life, and he got it.
I personally believe that the reason why Paul McCartney doesn't really talk about these things anymore is because he doesn't want this negative energy to surround his relationship with John Lennon, and I think this is very admirable of him. But I think that deep inside, Paul and Ringo know, and George and John knew, that she was one of the main reasons why the band broke up. So why am I saying that she wasn't? Well, I personally believe that the band was going to break up anyway, with or without Yoko, by the end of the Abbey Road sessions, and that is because of three major reasons. Number one, Brian Epstein's death. Number two, George Harrison. And number three, 1973, and most importantly, this is the main one, the creation of Apple. I'm not going to jump too much into detail about that because that can be a whole nother video, but for me, Apple was the reason why the Beatles broke up. It made them go from a band to business partners, and money is the root of all evil. It destroys everything it touches, and it's no exception when it comes to the Beatles. That is why I often disagree with people that say that the Beatles would have continued without Yoko, but I don't disagree fully. Here's the thing, I believe that the band would have broken up anyway with or without Yoko, that's for sure, but I also believe that if it weren't for Yoko, the Beatles would have reunited in the 70s, somewhere around 1975. In the early 70s, any question regarding the band's reunion was shut down immediately. They weren't open to it, they were really focused on their own solo stuff, and they had a really bad relationship with each other. But when it comes to 1974, 1975, John Lennon was open to the idea, George was open to the idea, Ringo was open to the idea, and McCartney was never really asked about it around that time, but it's pretty clear that if the rest of the band members were open to it, he was going to be open to it too, because he never really wanted to break up the Beatles anyway. He was the first to announce it, but he was the last one to kind of pull out.
You see, it's strange, because at one period when they're asking me, I was saying, no, never, what the hell, go back, no, not me. And then there came to a period when I thought, well, why not, if we felt like making a record or doing something. Everybody always envisaged the stage show. To me, if we worked together at studio again, you know, if we wanted to do it, then it'd be worth it. If we got in the studio together and thought we turn each other on again, then it would be worth it, you know.
But we all know what was happening to John Lennon in the mid-70s, his lost weekend, his separation from Yoko, his brief relationship with May Pang, some of his most questionable albums. So the reunion never really happened, and I know that a lot of you are probably thinking, what does Yoko have to do with any of this? Well, the main reason why John has such a negative opinion on the Beatles' legacy in the early 70s was mainly because of all the hate that Yoko was getting from the Beatle fans. People calling her names, racial slurs, and making fun of the way she looked. It was clearly not a fun time for Yoko, and John, being her husband, was definitely affected by it too, you know, and that is the main reason why every time the Beatles were brought up, I think that it stirred those memories of how much of a hard time Yoko had during those years in the early 70s where people seemed to fucking hate her no matter where she went. When you look at John Lennon's interviews post-Beatles, you realize that as years go by, as you dive deeper and deeper into the 70s, the more positive his opinions on his years with the band are. At first, it was really aggressive, it was really negative, he was calling Paul a bore, he was saying that he had no talent, and then after a few years he would say, I actually like this about Paul, I actually enjoyed that.
I haven't worked with Paul because we had a more difficult time, but now we're pretty close.
To the point where as you get closer to the 80s, you'll find him reminiscing and missing his days with the band. Now, I don't believe that she was the only reason why the band never reunited. I believe that George's lack of enthusiasm was also a factor, but she was definitely the main reason, and that's why I agree and disagree with people that say that she broke up the Beatles. You know, I don't think she was the main factor. I believe the band would have broken up anyway, but I think the relationship between the band members would have been way better if not for Yoko. Now, it's not that it bothers me that we never really got a reunion album. I've explained multiple times on this channel why a 1973 or 1975 Beatles album doesn't really sound like the greatest idea ever. It's more about this being my favorite band of all time and knowing that this woman made it very difficult for them to have a good relationship before and after the band broke up. So I disagree. I don't think that she broke up the Beatles, but I do believe that the main reason why they had such a nasty relationship after the band broke up is because of Yoko Ono.
But it's going to be such an incredible sort of comical thing, like in 50 years' time, you know. They broke up because Yoko sat on an M.
But that is only my personal opinion, my way of seeing things. Feel free to disagree or agree with me in the comment section down below. I'll make sure to check it out and give you my opinion on your opinion. The main reason why I make these videos is because I want to know your thoughts, so I'm really excited to see what you guys have to say about this one. If you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. If you want me to talk about any other topics related to music, if you want me to check out a song, album, or artist, go ahead and leave it down below so I can read it and fulfill your request as soon as I can. I do hope I can see you guys soon with a new video, but until then, bye.